Okay, so between the last video, the voice one, and now, I actually had a personal supervisor meeting with my personal supervisor. So I'm going to talk about that now, rather than moving on to some of the other stuff that have happened weeks and weeks ago, because at least now I can get all my thoughts out while they are still fresh, and I will be referring to my notebook a lot. So it started out with getting some advice from Ewan Downey, who I will talk about in a different video, but it touched on a lot of things that keep coming up for me. Namely, while during the ensemble process, I come across as rather generous and supportive with ideas and stuff like that, I still tend to hold back quite a bit because I am very much in my head, and I am sort of, I guess, looking before I leap. And that was a phrase that he used in his feedback, that I should take risks and try to leap before I look. And yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I tend to try to analyze things and overanalyze it all before I jump in, because I'm trying to figure out what the best route to take is. And that kind of became the main theme of my meeting with my personal supervisor, is that I got to stop trying to figure out the right way of doing it before jumping in, and that I have to trust not only myself but also the other actors that I'm working with, that there will be a give and take relationship, and that I got to be able to try to do those things and put myself out there in a way. Yeah, she used the phrase bubble acting, which is quite useful. This idea that I have created a bubble around myself, and that's where I'm focusing all of my attention, rather than letting other people in or putting myself out towards other people. And she gave me a lot of questions to sort of ask myself. Basically, like, if I stop myself from doing something or do something other than a impulse, have to ask myself, like, well, what was that about? Why wasn't I doing that? Why didn't I go there? And I have to ask, like, do I trust myself? Why not? Do I trust the others? Why not? And various things like that. And so it basically comes down to I have to trust these impulses that I get, rather than deciding whether or not they work. And sometimes simply play around with doing the wrong thing and deciding, well, what is wrong for this character? Okay, well, let's go do that. Let's do that and just see what happens. Because, yeah, rather than figuring out what Matthew, would do, figure out what the character does. And that's sort of one of those abstractions in acting that always trips me up a little bit, because I am fairly literal-minded. And so I don't know, I struggle with things like, what would the character do? Like, who is this character? What did they have for breakfast? What was their life before this play? And things like that, because it's hard to feel like it matters at times, because I'm not showing any of that stuff when I actually do the show. But maybe that's my problem, thinking that way, and there is actually a way to do that, and to show those kind of decisions, and I got to figure out what that is. But figure out in a way that I'm not using my head all the time, or at least like learn how to reflect once I've gone home and I'm out of the rehearsal space, so that when I'm in the rehearsal space I can play rather than sit back and try to figure it all out. And then my personal supervisor gave me a lot of ideas for like places to look for workshops that can help me open up my body and be more present, as well as sort of giving me questions to reflect on, like, what am I afraid of when it comes to doing things in theatre. And I suppose the biggest thing that I'm afraid of when it comes to playing around in the rehearsal space is that I'm afraid of, I don't know if it's looking stupid or making people think I'm stupid or a bad actor, I guess. Like losing people's respect as an actor. I think that's my fear. And so I'm afraid to do things that might result in those kind of things, would result in people going home or going out to the pub with others. Well, I'm not present, being like, oh, Matt did this kind of thing today, it was weird, I don't get it. And that's what I'm afraid of happening. So my supervisor's advice was to do those things. I didn't tell her what my greatest fear was, she just put the question forward and she said, whatever that greatest fear is, go do that, go do it. Like, if your greatest fear is to have people laugh at you, then do your hardest, or try your hardest to make people laugh at you. And I guess that's good advice, although maybe this is the greatest fear talking, but I'm hesitant to go out and make people lose respect for me as an actor. So maybe the question becomes more like, what is it that would make people lose respect for me as an actor? Is it them laughing at me? Is it them just thinking I look stupid? And then attack it from that point. So yeah, I also need to get better at doing these journals, whether it's video or written form, just so that I have a few more specifics to really talk about, because I didn't today, except for the getting out of my head thing. And yeah, and she also gave me a lot of good theatre theorists to look into, which is going to be exciting. So yeah, the four things that she wanted me to really look at was fearlessness, faith, trust, and commitment. And those are the things I have to try to sort out and be better at. So I think that's going to be kind of one of my biggest goals moving forwards after this semester, as well as sort of building on my versatility, which, I mean, all these things will build into my versatility, and that's kind of how I have to look at it. So I got to do those things. I just don't quite know where to start, I suppose. I guess simply I just got to start practicing opening myself up, like in the literal sense, like, well, not in a technical sense. That's better. I gotta practice my voice work, practice some movement stuff, take workshops where I can. There should be people here who can teach me Alexander technique. Hopefully I can get into that. And yeah, I think maybe that's just gotta be where I put my foot in the door first, and I gotta work on my attitude when it comes to these rehearsal spaces, because that's, in the end, that's what's keeping me back, is my own personal mindset, and I guess pride. Maybe a lot of this comes down to pride, get my finger out of the lens. So I have to learn how to be a bit more humble about these things, I guess, or just not so hyper aware of what others might be thinking about me, because that shouldn't matter. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now after that feedback session. So hopefully those will be things I remember and focus on in the new year.